2 years ago, when I was a sophomore here at Syracuse University, I saw an inspirational quote somewhere. The quote said, "Do one thing every day that scares you." And like so many other inspirational quotes I've seen in my 22 years of life, this left me feeling kind of mediocre. One thing every day that scares me, it seemed impossible. So I started to think about this, and I asked myself, what was keeping me so sheltered? Why did I feel so stuck in my daily routine? And after thinking about this for a while, the conclusion I came to was that I felt disconnected from the world around me. I was having more conversations and interactions digitally than I was in person. I wasn't giving myself many opportunities to leave my comfort zone. And ultimately, if I wanted to begin doing things that scared me, because apparently that is something that we're all supposed to care about, I had to make some changes in my life, beginning with my relationship with technology. My first thought was to resort to the trends we've seen so many times before, like delete your social media or don't use your phone past 10 p.m. Our society seems to have a pretty good grasp on the fact that many of us are addicted to technology, but I wanted my approach to be different. Rather than spending my time policing my technology habits, I set out to completely redefine my social tendencies. I wanted to see what would happen if I began prioritizing personal, face-to-face human connection in my life. With this new goal in mind, I did, get ready, not one, but 2 things that scared me. That's right, I outdid the quote. To begin, I knew that something had to change about my technology use. I couldn't successfully maximize my personal interactions without taking away my biggest distractor from these interactions, which happened to be my smartphone. So here's the first thing I did that scared me. I went out and I bought a $20 flip phone, which I went on to use as my only means of digital communication for the next 4 months. I had nothing against technology. I honestly think technology is an amazing tool. But I wanted to fully dedicate myself to this experiment. I wanted to strengthen my ability to others on. As for the second thing I did that scared me, I asked myself how exactly I could connect with as many people as possible. I mean, if I was gonna do this, why not go big? And so, with the support of my incredible parents, I decided to take a semester off of college. I packed my bags. I moved to in all of the world. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called Orlando, Florida. And I accepted a position working at Walt Disney World, specifically in the Animal Kingdom theme park. I'll talk about that in a little bit. I remember literally running to my family and friends to tell them about this epiphany I had experienced. I was going to be taking a break from technology to use a bulky, ugly flip phone with a 2-hour battery life, and I couldn't be more excited. I explained that I was doing this to challenge myself, to reset, to cleanse, if you will. I wanted to be less connected digitally and more connected face-to-face. And as I told them all of this, I felt so sure of myself. However, I abruptly learned that my decision to use a flip phone was not nearly as exciting to other people as it was to me. My mom was absolutely horrified that she would no longer be able to track my location. And as for my friends, you know, I can only imagine what was going through their heads the moment I told them I was going to be using a phone. But based on their reactions, I really don't think they would have been surprised if next I had said I was moving out to the woods and living alone as a hunter-gatherer. I will say that the people in my life are extremely supportive of me, so they all just kind of let me run wild. Within my very first day, actually using this flip phone, my tone shifted and an overwhelming sense of regret set in. Almost immediately, I wanted to quit, to take it back, to return to the safety and the security of my smartphone. But the thing is, I had already made the grand gesture to everyone in my life that I was doing this. I had made my case. I had publicly expelled modern technology from my life. If I'm being honest with you, I was very dramatic about the whole thing. Dare I say, more dramatic than maybe I needed to be. I was in too deep, and frankly, I had too much pride to go back on everything I had just said, and so I stuck with it. I kept going. And I'll tell you what, using a flip phone in 2017 was totally doable. And that's actually something I want to touch on. Using a flip phone today is by no means heroic or revolutionary. I recognize that. Plenty of people today use flip phones. But for me, as someone who not only has been privileged and fortunate enough to use a smartphone for so long, but also as someone in college who studies broadcast and digital journalism and is expected to be constantly updated on media and the news, this was certainly a personal challenge for me. In this tiny phone, I had a whopping 5 contacts saved. Just my 2 parents, my older brother, Michael, and my 2 little sisters, Lauren and Gabriella. Not even my best friends made the cut. Mostly because typing out and saving a contact took me upwards of 10 minutes. I am truly convinced that flip phones were designed for people with the most dexterous, Barbie-sized fingers. I made sure to get the most basic flip phone I could find. No internet, no games, definitely no GPS. I have no sense of direction. That was a disaster. Using this flip phone, I gained an understanding of just how much time I had been wasting away on my smartphone. Today, 96% of American adults own a cell phone of some kind. And according to a Nielsen report, we spend an average of 11 hours a day interacting with media. 11 hours! This includes the time that we spend doing things like watching TV, listening to the radio, and browsing the internet. So in other words, here we are in 2020, and nearly half of every single day is spent with media. We are media-consuming machines without even recognizing it. So with that being said, when I used the flip phone, my consumption significantly decreased. I was no longer using a device to look at social media, or to listen to podcasts, or to FaceTime my sisters so that we could talk about the most recent episode of The Bachelor. I estimate that prior to using this flip phone, I was spending about 6 hours a day in screen time on my smartphone, a considerable amount of time to be staring at a tiny screen. So I essentially had an extra 6 hours added to every day. Now you're probably wondering, Brianna, what did you do with all of this extra time? And to answer your question, I wrote 3 books. No, that's a lie. Can you imagine though? Admit it, for a second, you all thought I was really impressive. No, I didn't write any books. Truthfully, not a whole lot changed about my daily routine, except that my focus remained on increasing my social interactions. And so I found myself talking to strangers a lot more. I would ask people how their day was going. I would smile as I walked by someone. And I generally tried to make conversation when I normally would look down at my smartphone. And this wasn't easy at first. In 2018, a study was done by the Pew Research Center to assess the cell phone habits of American teenagers. In this study, the vast majority of participants reported that one of the biggest reasons they use their cell phone is to connect with other people. Not surprising at all, right? I think we would all agree that connection is a huge benefit of technology. But what I find particularly interesting is that in this same study, where participants just said that they use their phone to connect with other people, nearly half of participants reported that when they're in public, they purposefully use their phone as a way to avoid talking to people face to face. So clearly there's a discrepancy here. Our technology, which aims to bring us closer together, can easily have the opposite effect and assist us in avoiding human connection. So when I got over this initial awkwardness of not having a smartphone in front of me all the time, I actually really began to enjoy my interactions with people. I had gone from hiding behind my smartphone to suddenly searching for any chance I could get to speak with someone. And what do you do when you have a newfound love for talking to strangers? Well, if you're me, the next logical step is to get a job at one of the most crowded, people-filled, jam-packed locations on the face of the planet. I am Disney World, otherwise known as the most magical place on Earth. I worked in Animal Kingdom at an attraction called Kilimanjaro Safaris. In case you are not familiar with Kilimanjaro Safaris, my job consisted of me driving a huge safari truck which held about 30 people at a time around an animal reserve filled with real, live African safari animals. As I drove guests around on this 20-minute long safari tour, I would tell them about each of the animals we drove by. It's a very popular attraction, and for good reason. The animals come right up next to you, and it's a really beautiful experience. So beautiful that sometimes guests had a hard time processing what exactly they were seeing. There was one time a guest came up to me after a safari, and she looked at me with the most genuine expression, and she said, "I cannot believe how realistic those animatronics looked." Once again, they were real animals. There were lions, giraffes, cheetahs, zebras, a little baby hippo, and so many more. I truly loved my job. I did quickly find that my favorite part of my job was not my interactions with the animals, it was my interactions with the people. Every single day, I met hundreds of people from all over the world, and they would tell me the most amazing things. They would tell me that they were in the park celebrating because they had just gotten engaged or married. They would tell me they had just graduated college or high school or even kindergarten. Sometimes they would tell me that after a long battle with cancer, they were finally in remission and they wanted to celebrate. And sometimes they told me that they were just in the park because they loved spending time with their family. There was one interaction that had a particularly large impact on me, and I think about it a lot. One day when I was working, it was a very hot afternoon in May, and I was about to go on my lunch break when I noticed a man standing, holding a map, looking very confused. He had 2 small children with him, and they were arguing and crying, and this dad just looked super overwhelmed. I was tired and ready to go on my lunch break, but I decided to walk over and see if there was anything I could help with. So I got to talking with this dad. He told me what he was looking for, and I helped him with some directions. Then I walked over to the 2 little kids, and I gave them stickers, and they stopped crying. Working in a theme park, helping with directions and handing out stickers was an everyday occurrence, so I didn't think much of this interaction. But I could see that this dad was extremely grateful. He continuously thanked me. And then I witnessed something I was not expecting at all. This man, who I did not know, began to cry in front of me. He told me it had been about a year since his wife had passed away, and this was the first trip the family was taking without her. I had barely done anything for this family, just some directions and stickers. But what was a small interaction for me had a profound impact on someone else. This journey I had been on, I was seeking human connection for my own personal benefit, and I hadn't really considered that these interactions are a two-way street. I may have been gaining a great deal from the people I spoke to, but I also had the ability to positively impact someone else, even in just a tiny way. In my time using the flip phone and working for the Walt Disney Company, I learned and experienced far more than I can tell you in a brief conversation. But ultimately, I had a few big takeaways. First, I learned that there is a whole lot in life to celebrate. I met people who are so happy to be alive, and this inspired me to appreciate and celebrate my own life and my health more. Working in Orlando every single day, I got the gift of witnessing people spend time with their most important loved ones. I got to see countless precious memories being made. I got to see children and adults alike really believing in magic. And in addition to the connections I made with theme park guests, I also made lifelong friendships with a group of my coworkers, and I will always be endlessly grateful for them. I remember finally leaving Orlando and re-entering the real world, which is unfortunately not covered in pixie dust. I felt upset that the magic I had been privileged to see every day in my job was no longer going to be present in my life. But as I settled back into the routine of being a college student, I arrived at my second big takeaway. I realized that even beyond the borders of the most magical place on earth, there is absolutely magic in this world, and it exists in each and every one of us. We live in a society of dreamers and creators and innovators. Every single person has a story, and we can all benefit from interacting with those around us. This year-long journey I took, using the flip phone, working in Disney, interacting with people on a daily basis, all brought me to one central truth. I believe in the simple yet profound magic of personal, face-to-face human connection, even in our digital world. And I want to take this time to emphasize that technology is not going anywhere anytime soon, and that's a good thing. Technology is not evil, and that's why I'm not encouraging you all to go out and buy a flip phone of your own. Technology is extremely valuable, but with that being said, at the foundation of everything we do, human connection is essential. We're at the beginning of a brand new decade. There's nothing better than a fresh start. And with this new decade, we have the opportunity to look inward and to decide what we really want out of these next 10 years. We can continue functioning as we have been, or we can make small changes that have the potential to have a profound impact on our lives. So if you're like me, and if maybe you have felt like you could be getting more out of your interactions with others, or more out of your life in general, I encourage you to look at other people as a source of inspiration. Talk to people. But more importantly, listen. There is something that can be learned from every single person who passes through our lives, but only if we open ourselves up to these opportunities. Be kind, even when you don't have to be. Embrace the journey of being a lifelong learner. Enjoy the opportunity to become familiar with as many people as you possibly can. Not only will you begin to feel more connected with the world around you, but by simply engaging with other people, you'll also be taking part in spreading a little bit of magic wherever you go. You might even be surprised to see how much one small interaction can brighten your entire day. There are a lot of different ways you can go about this, but personally, I've created the goal for myself to develop a connection with just one person every day, whether that means having a conversation with a stranger or even learning something new about someone I already know. This usually means that when I'm out in public, I try to keep my cell phone in my pocket. I'm no longer using the flip phone because, let's be honest, living in the 21st century is awesome, but I really try to keep my smartphone usage to a minimum. And like everything else in life, it's not about being perfect, it's just about effort. There is a great deal of beauty in the simple art of personally connecting with those around us. And I sincerely believe that once we begin prioritizing human connection, we will all find a little bit more magic in the world. Thank you very much.